who is like the team you look at and you think they're being slept on, they're not getting enough credit for what they're doing?
I mean, after this 3-game win streak
I knew it.
that the Hornets
I saw that
ended,
smile on your face,
they've
bro.
you just gotta say, Charlotte, don't you? I mean, no. I actually had a tough time answering this one. I think unlike other leagues, or maybe not other leagues, because I mainly just pay attention to the NFL. I think the NBA and the community around there's like pretty good at measuring how good a team is, just maybe because you play so many games and you have so much time to talk and think about it. Like, okay, those 5 teams I named in the West earlier, do you think any of those teams are like really super slept on?
No.
Not in particular, not really.
Maybe
then,
Dallas because they just changed their roster, but I think people are acknowledging it. Yeah.
Or, and then it's like you got like the Suns. Nah, people think they're pretty good. I mean, I think we all agree and know their problems. Or like the Lakers, same thing. I think maybe New Orleans is the team where it's like, yeah, they're pretty darn good. They've been playing some really good ball. Their defense looks good. And offensively, they're really starting to figure it out. Especially with Zion getting more involved. I was going to make a big point about this until the whole JJ Redick drama dropped today with his whole video and how many views it got and whatnot.
You can't talk about it now.
No, I can't talk about it now. I mean, I agree with him. Zion being, the creator, being the on the ball more has been really good, right? And I think as he gets healthier and as he starts to, like get some games in a row, and as Ingram does the same thing, it's like, okay, people were really excited about the potential of this very team like last year or a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. I can't remember. They were like the favorite team in the NBA. And it's like, dude, they're still here, right? This is still the same group of guys pretty much, except, now you've got maybe a couple extra folds there with like Jordan Hawkins and what he's been doing as sort of a movement shooter. He's been really, really fun to watch. And I was watching him at the not the skills challenge, the Rising Stars. He's got I know that's not the most competitive game in the world, but he's got a couple of moves in his bag. I think his game's going to grow into more than just being like a Duncan Robinson. I really do. But I think the Pelicans are a team where it wouldn't shock me if all of a sudden they get into a playoff series with a team that's like supposed to make the second round, and all of a sudden it doesn't look so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
they're my choice too.
Wow.
Yeah, they're like the one team. I mean, I think that you really hit the nail on the head, Matt. It's like there's not a lot of teams who don't get a bunch of coverage and shine and are winning a lot of games. And I feel like even we're culpable of this. Like, we haven't talked that much Pelicans, but they're playing really, really well. And I don't view them as a team that has like a title ceiling, so maybe that's part of it. But I do think that they're really good. I mean, they're 8th in net rating this year. They are 19-11 with Trey Murphy in the lineup, who was hurt to start the year. And Zion has been looking like Zion as of late. There was a little bit of a stretch earlier in the year where he was a little bit passive. It felt like maybe he didn't have his full athletic pop yet, but he's played into that shape. He's been playmaking really well, doing some more of that primary ball handling stuff. In February, he's 25, 6 and 6. And I am just endlessly amazed by his versatility, the number of things that you can do with fully healthy Zion. Like, it's just incredible. Obviously, he's this ridiculous transition weapon, but the sheer force that he has as a driver out of pick and roll, attacking mismatches out of the post. Obviously, he can dominate anybody one-on-one, but then if you dig, he's certainly a good enough playmaker to kick out to shooters in isolation, that first step in strength combo and vertical athleticism. He's just so crazy, crazy good, and I feel like that's starting to get acknowledged now, but it's been a little bit lost throughout this recent stretch of the year, and maybe they don't have that title upside because I worry about how dynamic can they be offensively as a team that doesn't have a great shooting ceiling, right? It's not that they have guys who can't shoot, but it's okay, Valanciunas is not a guy who wants to be living at the three-point line, nor is Herb Jones, nor is Brandon Ingram, nor is Zion. And when you have that sort of limitations in terms of dynamic shooting, and you also don't have like a tier 1A guy, I wonder, okay, how are you going to overcome these juggernauts? But when you're talking about being just like an unpleasant first round matchup, They have multiple star shot creators. CJ being your third option is pretty damn good. They are big in the front court. They have some physical dudes with Zion and Valanciunas out there. They have some really good supporting wings with Herb and Trey Murphy. They defend well as a team. Like, they check a lot of those just good team boxes. And I think it's not like there's some big gap between some of the teams that we do talk about more and New Orleans. They're not my favorite, like, dark horse out west, but I do think they are the ones who get the least attention for how well they're playing.
And if you guys harken back to a couple of years ago in the first round, Phoenix versus New Orleans, when Chris Paul went out for a little bit, that was a series where New Orleans did push Phoenix. Now, granted, Chris Paul is out for a little bit in that series, but also Zion Williamson is not out there in that series. So, New Orleans gave them a run for their money, and they're not even at full health. And that was a series where I was like, man, Phoenix is reeling. They're on the ropes. Like, New Orleans might steal this thing. I think you guys put them in the exact right tier they belong in. I don't think they're real contenders. I don't know if they're going to make a Western Conference Finals run or anything like that, but they are underrated. The biggest reason I don't view them in a different light, like you were saying, Matt, because they were. Dude, I took the bait, too. I was like, man, this team's going to win 50 wins. They're going to be 3-4 seed. Yeah. I was all in. I want them to get like one more role player, one more like scoring guard off the bench. I don't know if that can be Jordan Hawkins. I do want to talk about him for a minute. He hasn't been super efficient as of recently. He hasn't been playing great, but I don't think he's just a spot-up guy. Like, that guy is I think he's going to be a really special spot-up player one day, and if it is that six-man fill-it-up role or just a complementary offensive piece, he doesn't just have a really smooth shooting stroke, and he's not just good, curling around screens. This is a guy who's one hell of an athlete that if you can create him an advantage and get him a runway or have a guy running at him, like he has a little bit of that creation where he can get to the hoop and jam. And yeah,
and
he's a little bit more athletic.
Like, I think he's got an interesting ceiling, I guess, because I want to see how the creation does grow for him and how he can do off the dribble, because if he becomes sort of like a sixth man guy, like you said, but he's also a super strong movement shooter, I feel like that'd be an archetype of player that you don't see a ton of. It's not super common.
And it'd be something that's super valuable specifically in this lineup, like you guys mentioned, where you have McCollum, where you have Brandon Ingram, where you have Zion Williamson creating advantages for him, but also when you have lack of shooting in other areas. And the big difference to me is what you guys said. It's that Zion Williamson's going to be out there. If Zion Williamson is in a playoff series, it's like, who can hold him? I think it was friend of the show, Jokic Yostar and Pablo Escobar, shout out their show, State of the League.
Shout out.
You guys can check that out, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. They do great work. But I believe both of them said the same thing. It's just those singular athletic, like, first movements with Zion. If it's the step, if it's the contact, like, I can't remember which one of them said it, but absorbing
Pablo
that
said it on our show.
Absorbing that contact and then going up trying to meet him at the rim, you have to have such a specific defensive archetype and have these physical attributes to even match him. You have to be strong. You have to have that vertical pop, and it's really freaking hard. Zion's a tank, and if he is healthy in a playoff run, there's a lot of teams that don't have that one defensive weapon that you can turn to. Like, he'll just bully a lot of guys in matchups. So I don't know if I pick them to upset a team, but there's a chance, man. I mean, and they're going to, like I said with that Sun series, we all know how playoff basketball works, man. That one guy goes down that you can't have go down, and maybe the Pelicans pull it off, dude. They're definitely a good sleeper team.